Jacob opened the envelope expecting a gift from his mother. Instead, he found a signed bank withdrawal slip and a quiet message. "You cashed in early, I'm collecting now." Clara, his mother, sat 3 tables away, sipping her water in silence. The wedding photographer was still snapping photos, unaware. By the time dessert arrived, she'd already rewritten the future. "Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe." They said, "It's just a formality." They didn't know what I'd be bringing back. The envelope was cream, thick-stalked, and faintly perfumed. Somewhere between expensive and trying too hard. Clara held it at the corner, careful not to smudge the gold ink calligraphy spelling out her full name. Mrs. Clara M. Ellis. No mom, no mother of the groom. Just the formal print, like a summons. It arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a flyer for discounted cremation services and a coupon packet she never asked for. She brought the envelope inside with her groceries, laid it on the table beside a bruised pear and a receipt for cat litter. Then she stared at it for several minutes before reaching for the letter opener she hadn't used since tax season. Inside, the invitation unfolded like an award announcement. Vellum overlay, embossed initials, the names of the bride and groom, Jacob Ellis and Kendra Bloom, swirled across the page like royalty. Beneath them, the date, the venue, and a line about reception to follow. But what caught Clara's eye wasn't the font or the florals. It was the folded note card tucked behind it. Jacob's handwriting, slanted, familiar, rushed like always, spilled across the card in navy ink. "Can't wait to celebrate, with your blessing. We're so lucky to have your support. Love, Jacob." Clara read the note twice. Then once more, slower. Her lips barely moved. She set the invitation down, smoothed her palm over the tablecloth, and stood. Her tea had gone cold in the kettle, so she poured a glass of water instead. The house was quiet except for the soft ticking of the wall clock and the sound of her slippers against the tile. She sipped, returned to the table, and turned the invitation over. There was no RSVP card, just a website link. She typed it into her phone. A glossy page loaded. Their smiling faces greeted her, Jacob in a too-tight collar, Kendra mid-laugh, both wrapped in some autumn-filtered afternoon light. Beneath them the words, "Your presence is the best present." She clicked the tab labeled Registry, then paused. A pang of something, tight, unfamiliar, nudged beneath her ribs. She hadn't been caught off guard by much lately. She prided herself on that. But something was wrong. She opened her banking app. Her pension account, typically stable, had dipped. Not dramatically, but enough for her stomach to stiffen. She scrolled through the past month's activity, searching for something unusual. Gas, groceries, insurance, all familiar. Then, nestled quietly between 2 recurring charges, event services J plus K, $9,700, completed. Clara blinked. Her finger hovered over the line item, like touching it might change it. She clicked into the transaction. There was no detail, just the charge, the confirmation number, and her own name listed as the account holder. She sat down slowly. A small sound escaped her lips, something between a breath and a question. $9,700. From the account she used for utilities, occasional travel, and small gifts to charities she trusted. It wasn't an enormous sum in the grand scheme of weddings. But to her, it was a violation. Her pension was modest, calculated, not built for luxury, and certainly not for surprise withdrawals disguised as gratitude. She reached into the drawer beside her reading chair and pulled out the manila folder labeled Financials. She flipped to her retirement plan overview, then to her account history. Everything lined up, until now. She closed the folder, walked to her desk. Saturday. The RSVP site was still open on her phone. The phrase, "with your blessing," blinked in her mind like a cursor waiting for her to type something she hadn't agreed to. She pulled out her laptop, logged into her bank's web portal, and clicked into the detailed account summary. A loading bar appeared. Clara exhaled once, shallow, then the screen loaded. Her fingers hovered, eyes narrowing. Her cursor drifted toward transaction details, but she didn't click. Not yet. Something deeper was beginning to settle behind her stillness, not panic, not even anger, recognition. She stared at the screen and paused. Clara logs into her online banking and pauses. I never said yes, but the payment cleared anyway. Clara didn't sleep that night. She left the laptop open on the kitchen table, the screen dimmed but still glowing faintly. One line holding her attention like a held breath. Event services J plus K, $9,700, completed. At 6:12 a.m., with the sky outside just beginning. To shift from black to deep slate, she poured herself a cup of coffee she didn't want, sat down in her robe, and picked up the phone. The customer service line at her bank connected after 17 minutes of instrumental hold music. "Mrs. Ellis," the representative said cheerfully. "How can I assist you today?" Clara kept her tone even. "I need to dispute a transaction that was processed through my pension-linked account." She recited the charge, date, and dollar amount. The rep went silent for a beat, then tapped keys on the other end. "Yes," she said. "I see the transaction. It was wired to a vendor listed as Event Services J plus K. It appears to have been authorized through a valid power of attorney form on file." Clara blinked once. "I'm sorry," she said. "Through what?" "The payment was released with authorization from a registered agent. That's only permitted when a power of attorney is in place." "I never signed over power of attorney," Clara replied. Her voice didn't rise, but something behind it turned sharper. "Not to anyone." The rep's tone adjusted, professional but less confident. "One moment, please. Let me confirm the documentation." Another pause, then the voice returned, slower now. "Yes, I have a digital copy here. It was submitted 3 months ago. The signature on file matches your account." "Send it to me," Clara said. "Now." "Yes, ma'am, I'll email it immediately." She ended the call. Her coffee had gone cold. She opened her email. A new message appeared. "PDF attachment." Clara clicked. The form opened. "Limited durable power of attorney." Her name filled in across the top, and at the bottom, her signature. Only it wasn't hers. It mimicked the slant, the shape. But the ink stroke was too smooth. Her actual signature stuttered slightly on the A. Years of arthritis had made it so. This version looked deliberate, confident, forged. Beneath it, the name of the assigned agent, Jacob Ellis. She stared at the screen for a long moment, not breathing, not quite surprised, but changed. Then she rose quietly, walked to the hallway, and opened the cabinet beside the coat closet. Inside, a small, fireproof safe. She keyed in the code, her mother's birthday, and turned the handle. Click. The safe opened with its usual resistance, like it disliked being disturbed. Inside were the paper records of a life lived carefully. Tax returns, pension agreements, health proxies, and folders labeled in her tight cursive handwriting, legal, medical, travel, and beneficiaries. She reached for the folder marked legal and opened it on the living room table. Each form sat in its manila pocket, untouched, pristine, until she reached the one labeled power of attorney, blank copy. The envelope was empty, no form, no backup, just air. Clara slowly closed the folder, placed her hand flat over the missing page, and sat back in the chair. The quiet in the house had shifted. It no longer felt like peace, it felt like trespass. She reopens her safe and flips through old folders. One is missing. "They forged permission. I gave none." Clara always believed paper couldn't lie. Ink could smudge, words could be twisted. But paper, records, signatures, timestamps was honest, if you knew where to look. And right now, it was the only thing standing between suspicion and truth. She dialed the number for the school district's pension office. The line rang twice before a chipper voice answered. "Benefits and retirement, this is Kelly." Clara adjusted the phone against her ear and kept her voice calm. "Hello, Kelly. My name is Clara Ellis. I retired from Hartman Elementary 6 years ago. I need to speak to someone about a possible misuse of my pension-linked account." There was a pause, then a tone shift. "Certainly, Ms. Ellis. Can you hold for just a moment?" The hold music was gentle, light piano, something unmemorable. Clara stared at the edge of her desk where the varnish had worn away, a thin, pale ring in the wood like a scar from a long-forgotten teacup. When the line clicked again, the voice that returned was older, slower. Male. Ms. Ellis, this is George Simmons. I managed your file up until your retirement. What's going on? Clara inhaled. I was notified of a recent wire transfer linked to my pension, a large one. I didn't authorize it, but the bank says a power of attorney form was submitted months ago under my name. George made a sound, part sigh, part groan. That shouldn't have happened without cross-verification. We have strict protocols now. Can you confirm whether a power of attorney form was submitted? He didn't answer immediately. I can check. Do you recall granting power of attorney to someone recently? No, Clara said. Never. And certainly not for financial access. He cleared his throat. Okay, one moment. Another stretch of silence followed, punctuated only by the clicking of George's keyboard and Clara's heartbeat, slow and steady like a metronome trying to keep her from unraveling. Finally, he returned. I do see a form on file. Submitted electronically, attached to your account on April 11th of this year. The designated agent is listed as Jacob Ellis, my son. Yes, it appears the digital copy was uploaded through the secure link. The signature is affixed at the bottom. It looks like yours, Ms. Ellis. Clara closed her eyes. I need that form, she said. The hard copy, scanned or mailed. Either is fine. I can send it now via secure email. Please do. Within 2 minutes, her inbox pinged. She opened the attachment, her breath barely moving as she scrolled past the boilerplate text. The signature was there, her name, flowing like hers, but off. Too clean, too decisive. It wasn't hers. She saved the file to her desktop, then reached for her phone again, not to call the bank this time, or the pension office. She called Margaret. Her cousin had worked as a contract and probate attorney for 23 years. They hadn't spoken in months, but trust, real trust, didn't need frequency. Margaret answered on the second ring. Clara, I need 10 minutes, Clara said. Legal ones. Okay. Clara sent the file over. Margaret didn't say much as she opened it. Just low hums, the occasional clicking of her mouse, and a quiet, impressed whistle when she reached the signature page. They scanned your name in, Margaret said flatly. This wasn't signed digitally through any legit software. It was cut from somewhere else and pasted. There's a slight pixel drop, and the document's metadata says it was compiled on a different system, an editing program, not a form filler. So you're saying, I'm saying this is provable fraud, easily. If they use this to access funds, they've opened themselves to criminal liability, and you're within your rights to pursue both civil and legal action. Clara didn't reply. She just sat there, the heat from her tea cooling by the second, her spine straighter than it had been all week. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it was confirming. Her lawyer cousin confirms, this is provable fraud. They told people I gifted the dinner. I just hadn't seen the receipt yet. The catering office smelled faintly of thyme, printer toner, and something sugary that lingered in the vents. Clara stepped through the glass door wearing a long oatmeal coat, a scarf wrapped high at her neck, and no trace of familiarity in her face. She didn't give her last name. Hi, she said to the young woman at the front desk, voice soft but even. I'm helping with some final guest details for the Bloom Ellis wedding. Thought I'd check the meal count in person so there aren't any surprises. The receptionist didn't ask for ID, just smiled, tapped her keyboard, and pulled up the file. Yes, here we are. Ceremony on the 17th. Indoor dinner reception. They went with the seasonal harvest menu. Nice choice. Clara nodded. I'm just double-checking who's listed as the primary contact. Sometimes they forget to copy us older folks. The receptionist turned the screen slightly. It looks like Jacob Ellis is the event contact, and billing is listed under Clara M. Ellis. The pause was reflexive. Clara blinked just once. Oh? She asked, eyebrows lifting faintly. Can I see the original estimate? Sure, just a moment. The woman left the desk and disappeared behind a partially frosted glass divider. Clara stood perfectly still, her leather gloves folded neatly in her hands. The hum of a small office printer echoed faintly in the back. When the woman returned, she carried a folder, cream-colored, corner-clipped, bearing the caterer's logo in bronze foil. She flipped it open on the counter and rotated it for Clara to see. The top of the estimate listed the basics. Client, Clara M. Ellis, event, Bloom Ellis wedding guest, count, 114. Under that, the signature line, Jacob's name, his real one, in his real handwriting, loose, looping, slightly uphill, as if he were signing something for fun. "Would you like a printed copy?" the woman asked. "No, that's okay," Clara said gently, but her hand moved slowly into her coat pocket. She pulled out her phone, angled low and discreet. The shutter was silent as the screen blinked once. Click. "I'll make sure that's all sorted," Clara said, folding her scarf back over her collar. "Great. We'll be sending a final invoice soon. Usually it goes to the billing contact, Ms. Ellis." Clara smiled without teeth. "I imagine she'll be expecting it." Outside, the air smelled of rain about to start. Clara walked 3 blocks without looking up, her phone warm in her palm. She stopped at a bus bench, sat down, and opened her photos. The image was clear. The estimate, the billing contact, the signature, all perfectly centered. She tapped share, typed in her own email, and hit send. The file was on its way. Proof. Not a memory, not a suspicion, not a "he said" twisted over brunch or softened at a family gathering. This was printed, signed, filed. She sat still a little longer, listening to the rustle of trees overhead, the clink of Sam Yun's keychain passing behind her. The wind pushed against the edge of her coat, but she didn't shiver. Inside her inbox, the message landed with a ping. Subject, wedding estimate attached, was the image of her name being spent like currency. Clara snaps a picture and forwards it to herself. They chose the gown together, with the funds they stole together. The bridal boutique smelled like white florals and expensive nerves. Clara didn't mean to end up there. She hadn't followed anyone, hadn't mapped the address with vengeance in mind. She had been walking downtown to pick up a box of tea from the shop that still carried her preferred brand when she passed the window display. Satin, lace, and soft pink champagne on mannequins that looked like they'd never known doubt. She paused only because of the name on the signage, Elin Bridal Studio, and the vague familiarity it stirred. A woman in a headset smiled from inside, waved politely. Clara nodded once, prepared to move on. Then she heard her name. "Ms. Ellis." She turned. The young woman at the front desk was stepping toward her, the headset now hanging loose around her neck. She had a round face, almond eyes, and a sharp memory. "It's me, Janelle. I was in your 5th grade class. Hartman Elementary?" Clara blinked. "Janelle Bostic?" The young woman laughed softly. "Wow, you still remember." "Of course I do. You won the county spelling bee and cried in the hallway because you thought it was a fluke." "Still cry over my own success," Janelle said with a grin. "What brings you here?" Clara hesitated, then gestured toward the gowns behind the glass. "Just passing by?" "Oh, well, we're closed for fittings right now, but you're welcome to come in. It's quiet." Inside, the boutique was even more ethereal. Soft music, velvet stools, racks of ivory and tulle whispering with movement even in still air. Clara walked slowly, running her fingertips across a folded veil. Janelle followed. "We actually had a bride in here just last week who listed you as her co-signer. I figured it was family." Clara's hand froze against the fabric. "Pardon?" "The Bloom Ellis wedding. Kendra. She said she was so lucky your name could be on the financing form. I thought, wow, that's love. Not many parents still willing to co-sign these days." Clara turned slowly. "I never signed anything." Janelle's smile faltered. "Oh, maybe I misunderstood. Can I see the paperwork?" Clara asked, gentler than she expected. Let me ask my manager." 1 second she disappeared behind a soft curtain. Clara stood in the middle of the boutique, surrounded by $2,000 worth of silks and $400 worth of rush hem charges, breathing in the betrayal that now had lace trim. Janelle returned with a folder and an apologetic look. Since you're listed as a responsible party, we can show you the account file. Just no photos, please." Clara nodded. Inside the folder was a 4-page agreement. Clara scanned quickly. Payment breakdowns, delivery timelines, an $800 rush fee for a last-minute alteration Kendra apparently had to have. Her eyes reached the bottom of page 2. There it was. Cosigner, Clara M. Ellis. Signature, digitally submitted verification, email on file, clara.ellis.family@gmail.com. Clara stared at the email. It wasn't hers, close but not quite. "They said you approved it via link," Janelle offered carefully. "It came from this email. I don't own that address." "Oh." A long pause. "Would you like a copy of this?" Clara looked up. "Yes, please send it to this email." She wrote her real one on a sticky note. "And if it's not too much trouble, I'd like the full purchase agreement, every item listed." "Of course." Janelle was quiet now. Her eyes darted once toward the back curtain before returning to Clara. "I'm really sorry." "Don't be," Clara said. "You didn't forge anything." She left the boutique without touching another gown. Outside, the sky had shifted, clouds crowding in low and dull. A storm was building, not the kind that soaked everything quickly, but the kind that crawled and hovered until nothing felt safe from it. Clara didn't pull her coat tighter. She let the chill rise. Because something colder had settled inside her now, Clara requests a complete copy of the bridal purchase agreement. They posted stories of gratitude, but tagged everyone but me. Clara didn't need to be on social media. She hadn't posted anything in years, hadn't shared a filtered selfie or brunch photo since she'd retired. Her account was more of a window than a billboard, a quiet login once a week to see what her nieces were baking or which friends had finally bought rescue dogs. But that evening, while eating reheated lentil stew in front of her laptop, she opened the app out of habit and found herself staring at a wedding story thread she hadn't been invited to follow, but couldn't seem to look away from. It started with a boomerang, the bride's champagne flute clinking gently against her mother's. The caption read, "Strongest woman I know. None of this would have happened without her. Gratitude. My people." Clara tapped to the next post. Photos of the venue walkthrough. Kendra's parents with Jacob in the center, a series of slow-motion videos showing Kendra hugging her future in-laws. "Can't believe how lucky I am to have them," the caption read. Tagged, "At mother of the bride, at dad strong, at family first crew." Not a single mention of Clara, not a single tag. She scrolled further. A reposted video from Kendra's sister. "The way our family came together to make this day magical." 3 hearts, a sparkle emoji. Clara's name once again absent. Her phone buzzed just as she tapped to close the app. A direct message. From her sister, Lorraine. "Lorraine, just saw the stories. Aren't you the one paying for all this?" Clara didn't reply. Not immediately. Instead, she opened her desktop folder labeled Financials. She created a new subfolder. Name, Retirement Theft. Then she dragged the catering invoice screenshot inside, the forged power of attorney form, the digital signature from the bridal shop. Each file had a date and a time and a title. She didn't rename anything emotionally, just facts. No flourishes, no caps lock. In the search bar of her inbox, she typed, "Ellis wedding estimate." 2 emails popped up. She highlighted them both, dragged them to the desktop. She paused only once, her finger hovering over the mouse. Her eyes flicked back to the open story, now featuring a pan of the reception table mock-up, all white florals and crystal chargers. The audio clip playing under it was a remixed voiceover. She understood the assignment. Clara closed the tab. Back on her desktop, she opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, vendor column. B, amount column. C, source of funds. Column D, authorization. Type column. E, evidence collected. She typed quietly, line by line. She wasn't angry, not in the way people often imagined. It was something quieter, colder. Like standing in a house where all the furniture had been rearranged without asking, and still being expected to host the party. Her phone buzzed again. "Lorraine?" Again. "Lorraine, you okay?" Clara finally typed back. "Clara, I'm documenting. That's better than okay. She didn't wait for a reply. She opened a new Word document. Header, Affidavit of Misuse. Initial notes. Outside, the streetlights buzzed into life. Moths began their soft collisions against the glass, one by one. Inside, Clara worked quietly, the glow of her screen the only light she needed. She was building something stronger than a confrontation. She was building a case. Clara begins organizing receipts in a file titled Retirement Theft. I stopped replying. I didn't stop watching. Clara didn't make a single announcement. No email, no grand confrontation, no accusations typed in all caps. She simply reseated. First it was the group text. Brunch this Sunday, final menu tasting. So excited. She read it, marked it unread, and let it sit. Then came the planning spreadsheet shared by Kendra, color-coded and crowded with passive-aggressive comments about deadlines and centerpieces. Clara opened it, scrolled through 3 tabs, then quietly removed herself as a collaborator. No one reached out. And still, she watched. She opened Jacob's social posts each night, not to see if she was mentioned, she knew she wouldn't be, but to track the vendors. The decorators tagged, the florist's logo in the corner of an Instagram reel. A bridal shoe company linked through an unboxing video captioned, "When your MIL says yes to the heels." She had not. Each post was another breadcrumb, another receipt. And Clara, now the ghost in the machinery, followed every trail. By the 3rd week, her role had become entirely invisible. A friend from her book club texted, asking why Clara hadn't come to her own son's engagement brunch. I heard it was beautiful. Kendra's mother made a toast. Clara responded simply, I'm sure it was. Her absence was never addressed in the planning meetings because it was never acknowledged. Like so many women of a certain age who start to fade from family photographs before they physically leave a room, Clara's disappearance was more convenient than curious. Until the florist called, she picked up on the 2nd ring. Hi, is this Miss Ellis, Clara? This is she. Oh, great. I just wanted to follow up on the outstanding balance for the ceremony arrangements. Kendra mentioned you'd be handling the final payment? Clara didn't speak right away. She walked to her desk, where the spreadsheet still glowed with her labeled folder, Retirement Theft. I won't be covering that, she said. Oh, the florist hesitated. Should I follow up with Kendra then? Send the revised invoice to them directly. Jacob Ellis and Kendra Bloom. A longer pause. Yes, ma'am. I'll update the file. Clara ended the call without explanation. She sat there, motionless, for several seconds. The sunlight pooled across the floor, warm against the tips of her shoes. Though her arms remained chilled, this was the first time she'd spoken the shift aloud. Not to herself, not in writing, to someone else, and it felt clean. Not vengeance, not drama, just subtraction. She picked up her planner and flipped to the upcoming weekend. In place of the tasting, she penciled in market plus walk. In place of the dress fitting, she wrote quiet. The silence, she realized, was not a vacuum. It was strategy. Later that evening, another message came in. Jacob. Hey, just checking in. Kendra said you missed the tasting? She read it. Didn't respond. He sent a follow-up the next day. Everything okay? Let me know if you need anything for the rehearsal dinner. Clara tapped the message, highlighted it, and hit archive. She was done playing the willing participant. Let them plan a celebration on her behalf. Let them speak in hashtags and half-truths. Let them guess when she vanished. Because by the time they noticed, the receipts would already be filed, and the math would no longer be in their favor. Clara tells the florist, send the revised invoice to them directly. They smiled and waved. I smiled back and noted the final balance. The venue looked like it had been curated for a magazine spread. Whitewashed beams, gold-rimmed glassware, candle holders already positioned with surgical symmetry. It smelled faintly of lemoned wood, garden roses, and fresh varnish. The silence before the others arrived was the only time Clara felt like the room was truly hers. She stepped in early, 10 minutes before the scheduled walkthrough, and let the space speak for itself. Everything was polished, unbothered, unaware that it had been bought with someone else's future. She traced the edge of one reception table with her fingers. The linen was pressed, the floral arrangement already misted. A clipboard on the bar caught her attention. She approached casually, flipping the corner of the top sheet. Vendor ledger. Client, Bloom Ellis Wedding. Billing contact. C. Ellis bank account. Ending in 2031. Her heart didn't race. She simply noted the final payment line, an amount just over $5,000 still marked as pending, and the bank routing number she recognized as her own. Behind her, the venue door opened. "Mom!" Jacob called, upbeat. "Didn't expect you early." She turned, hands calmly at her sides. "I was in the neighborhood." Kendra came in behind him, balancing a to-go coffee and sunglasses pushed up like a tiara. She offered Clara a polite, impersonal smile, more host than daughter-in-law. "We're so glad you're here. The florist should be by soon, and Jacob said you'd help double-check the seating chart." Clara smiled softly. "Of course." Vendors began filing in. Photographer, coordinator, a man holding color swatches and stress behind his teeth. Jacob introduced her to each one with the same phrase. "This is my mom. She's just here for support." Clara nodded, shook hands, said little. She did not correct him, but she did listen closely when the coordinator explained the payment flow for final confirmations, emphasizing that all drafts would process from the primary account on file. Clara's gaze lingered a second longer than it needed to. They moved from the outdoor ceremony space to the reception hall. Clara walked near the back, hands folded loosely in front of her, absorbing details. She spotted a clipboard resting against the DJ's table with a post-it that read, "Final invoice. C. Ellis will confirm." By the time the group began debating how many uplights were elegant but not overkill, Clara excused herself quietly. She walked out to her car, unlocked it, and sat without starting the engine. Her phone was already in her hand. She opened her Notes app, copied the last 4 digits of the bank account from the vendor ledger, and compared it to her account ending. A match. She opened her email. 2. vendor.relations@hanovervenuegroup.com. Subject: Urgent, authorization revocation. To whom it may concern, I, Clara M. Ellis, am listed as a financial point of contact for the Bloom Ellis wedding scheduled on the 17th of this month. This is not accurate nor authorized. Please be advised that I am formally revoking any and all financial authorization under my name or linked accounts, effective immediately. No future charges should be processed through any account belonging to me. Clara M. Ellis, 10:43 a.m. She hit send, then added the screenshot of the vendor ledger to her retirement theft folder. She returned inside just as Jacob was posing in front of the hanging lights, testing the angles. He didn't notice her re-entry. She said nothing, and neither did the balance sheet, which, by the time the ceremony arrived, would no longer answer to her. Clara submits a formal revocation of financial authorization. They rehearsed vows. I reviewed documents. The sun dipped low behind the chapel windows, casting long, rose-colored shadows across the pews. Everything was softened by the golden hour, except Clara. She sat in the 3rd row, a few feet from the aisle where her son would soon pretend to walk into his future. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her handbag at her feet, the edge of her heel just touching the strap. To her left, Kendra's aunt adjusted the straps of her dress and whispered loudly about the lighting. To her right, Jacob's best man practiced his lines under his breath, pausing to clear his throat with exaggerated weight. Clara watched. They were all so busy preparing for a performance. None of them noticed the one that had already begun. The officiant stepped forward. He wore a lavender tie and a broad, stage-ready smile. "All right, we'll walk through the opening, then the vows. We'll pause for positioning. Then if you'd like, we can rehearse the reception toasts. No pressure to be word perfect?" Kendra laughed. Jacob gave her hand a small squeeze. Clara remained still. The processional music began to play from a Bluetooth speaker behind the altar, slightly tinny but enthusiastic. One by one, the bridal party began their slow, awkward walk down the aisle, tripping over timing and each other's heels. Laughter filled the room. Laughter and light. Until the officiant cleared his throat. "I also want to say a quick word of thanks to the parents, of course," he said, looking toward the audience section. "To the Blooms for their warmth and open hearts, and to Clara Ellis." Jacob's mother, whose incredible generosity helped make this celebration possible. Clara didn't blink. She didn't tilt her head or smile politely. She looked directly at the officiant, as if he'd just cited a quote she never authored. Jacob turned toward her with a sheepish half-grin, as if to say, "Just go with it," as if to imply that silence could mean agreement. Clara offered a tight nod. Not in confirmation, in calculation. She already knew what she was going to do. Later, as the rehearsal dinner setup began in the hall next door, she quietly excused herself and walked to the women's lounge. Inside, the marble was too polished and the air too cold, but she liked the privacy. From her bag, she pulled out a white envelope, slim and sealed. Inside, a withdrawal slip from her personal account, signed and dated. She had already spoken to her financial advisor. The amount matched the initial deposit she now knew had been transferred out under forged authorization. The paperwork had been prepared. All it needed was a handoff, not to the bank. That part was already in motion. The envelope wasn't for a teller, it was for the table. She slid it into her clutch, tucked it just behind her compact and lipstick. The leather gave a soft sigh as it closed. In the hallway outside, she could hear the rising pitch of a toast rehearsal. Someone was thanking everyone who made this possible. Clara adjusted her scarf in the mirror. She smoothed the fine lines around her mouth with a motion so small it barely registered. Her reflection didn't smile back. As she stepped into the corridor, the scent of roasted chicken and sweet glaze wafted from the warming trays. "Clara," someone called, a coordinator in black waving a clipboard. "You're needed for a quick photo." She nodded, walked slowly, purposefully. The envelope was weightless, but it would land like a stone. Clara slides a withdrawal slip into her evening clutch. They expected a blessing. I brought a form. By the time Clara arrived, the day had already taken on a kind of pre-packaged perfection. The kind photographers love, clouds soft enough to diffuse the sun, air just crisp enough to carry florals but not blow them over. The valet offered to take her keys, and she handed them over without fanfare, her gloved fingers brushing the edge of the navy clutch she kept pressed under her arm. She walked past the manicured archway without pausing to take a picture. The chapel was dressed like a dream that hadn't asked who was paying for it. White ribbons curled neatly along the ends of the pews, and the aisle had been lined with ivory petals, hand-scattered to appear effortless. The guests inside were already seated in their best versions of themselves, suits just tailored enough, dresses that hinted at money without declaring it. Clara slipped into a seat near the back. She chose it deliberately, far enough not to be pulled into small talk, close enough to see the altar without needing to squint. No one turned when she entered, no one gestured or whispered her name. Her silence had not only been expected, it had been planned for. She sat with her back straight, hands folded gently on her lap, her navy dress absorbing the light without reflecting any of it. It was formal but not festive, respectful but not included. A uniform for a woman who had once been central and was now politely peripheral. There were no printed programs on the seats, just murmured instructions and practiced glances. Clara watched the movements with detachment, noting how well-rehearsed everything already seemed. She did not fidget. She did not fix her posture. She simply observed. After the ceremony, the crowd was gently funneled into the reception hall, where the scent of lemon-glazed chicken and toasted almonds greeted them before the music did. The decor followed the same aesthetic as everything else. Blush tones, eucalyptus runners, gold-accented menus placed at perfect angles on each plate. Clara found her name at a table close to the wall. Not family, not quite guest. The table card said supporters, written in a looping font that tried to sound grateful. She took her seat, adjusted the fold of her jacket, and quietly sipped the ice water waiting for her in a goblet rimmed with condensation. Near the entrance, a long table had been set up to collect the gifts, wrapped boxes stacked at one end, elegant bags tied with satin bows at the other. A wooden sign rested in the center, scripted in white paint, "Cards and gifts. Thank you for your generosity." Clara stood when no one was watching. She walked to the table, her heels making the softest sound on the polished floor. Her envelope was plain, no design, no return address, no glitter, just sealed. Inside, the withdrawal slip rested with silent finality. A small, folded note was tucked behind it. She placed it deliberately in the center of the spread, not hidden, not spotlighted, just there, waiting. No one stopped to greet her on her return to the table. No one asked where she had gone. She picked up her fork when the salad arrived and ate with quiet precision, her mind half present and wholly prepared. Sometime later, the photographer called for a picture of the gift table. Kendra rose, still glowing with ceremony, and made her way over with an eager smile. She adjusted the ribbons, straightened the cards, turned a few envelopes just slightly for better framing. Her hand reached Clara's envelope. She paused. It was the only one without decoration. Curious, she opened it. First, the slip, a completed bank withdrawal form, signed and dated. Then the note, written in careful pen. "You cashed in early. I'm collecting now." Kendra looked up sharply. Across the room, Clara lifted her water glass and held it for just a second. No smile, no gesture, just acknowledgement. And then she drank. The envelope is picked up by Jacob's wife during the gift table photo. "They took from my future. I withdrew from theirs." The envelope sat unopened on the kitchen island for over an hour. Jacob had tossed it there with the rest, amid the calligraphy cards, the pastel gift bags, the checks written in flowery cursive from people who signed "with love," but whose names he couldn't quite place. Kendra had mentioned it during the Uber ride home, her voice clipped, her posture slightly stiffer than it had been during the bouquet toss. "She left something," she said. "Your mother." No name on the envelope, just a note. And a form. Jacob barely responded. He was tired. Buzzed from champagne, sore from dancing, still smiling in the mirror at the memory of everyone applauding their final dip. The wedding had gone off without a hitch, and that's what mattered. But now, in the still quiet of their apartment, garland half unpacked, the dress bag draped over a dining chair, he eyed the envelope again. Plain. White. The flap resealed slightly off-center from Kendra's earlier peek. He poured a glass of water, then sat at the island. Slowly, he opened the flap, tugging the paper free. The first thing he saw was the slip, a bank withdrawal form, his mother's name printed clearly, a dollar figure in neat black ink, a signature at the bottom, unmistakably hers. He blinked once, twice, then the note. It was handwritten, simple and spare. "You cashed in early. I'm collecting now." Jacob stared at the paper. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, but it cut. He read it again, then flipped the note over, as if hoping for a second page. There wasn't one. In the corner of the living room, Kendra had gone still. She wasn't scrolling anymore. Her phone sat face down on the couch cushion, untouched. "Did you know she was going to do this?" he asked, his voice flatter than he intended. "I didn't even know she was still coming to the wedding until the morning of," Kendra said. "You said she'd RSVP'd, but she didn't seem like she was part of any of it." "She paid for it," he muttered, tapping the envelope on the counter. Kendra didn't respond. For several seconds, the only sound in the apartment was the humming of the refrigerator, a mechanical steadiness that made the silence feel more fragile. Jacob stood, walked over to his laptop and opened the browser. He typed in the bank's name and logged in. He didn't want to believe it. But the deduction was there. Transfer, $9,700. Withdrawal, authorized by account holder. He leaned back, one hand gripping the counter. "She took it back," he said, more to himself than to Kendra. She really took it back. And then, quietly, beneath the indignation, beyond the wounded ego, came something else. Recognition. He thought about the extra meals at the tasting, the expedited linens, the dress financing, the florist who said a revised invoice had been sent, the photographer who confirmed a last-minute contract change just days before. One by one, the moments reshaped themselves in his memory. They hadn't just been forgotten by her. They had been watched, documented, reclaimed. The doorbell rang. He jolted slightly, unsure who it could be so late. When he opened the door, it wasn't a person. It was a padded legal envelope. The return address belonged to a law firm he didn't recognize. Inside, a formal letterhead and 3 pages of neatly formatted paragraphs. The final line caught his eye first. Filed claim. Civil suit for financial misuse and forgery. Clara M. Ellis vs. Jacob A. Ellis. The envelope slipped from his hand. He sank slowly into the nearest chair, the weight of every unchecked assumption beginning to shift. In the distance, Kendra picked up her phone again, turned it over, and said nothing. Clara files a civil claim for financial misuse and forgery. They called me dramatic. I called it documented. The first message came from her niece. Hey, Aunt Clara, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but did you really sue Jacob? The second, from her sister, was less measured. This is how you want to be remembered? As the mother who took her son to court? Clara didn't reply to either, not because she didn't have words, but because words were no longer her method of communication. She let the attachments speak. She let the invoices and emails and bank records, labeled and time-stamped, take the place of explanations that would only be met with resistance. There were quiet fallouts. Her cousin removed her from a recipe chain. A second cousin, who never sent a birthday card but always asked about money, unfollowed her online. No confrontation, just soft exits. What surprised her more was the silence from Jacob himself. No call, no statement, not even a forwarded apology from his lawyer. Just a vacuum. At first, Clara thought perhaps he'd gone quiet out of shame, but then she remembered how quiet people can be when they're strategizing. And she'd raised him. She knew the difference. She spent her mornings tidying her apartment, her afternoons filing, her evenings walking without headphones, the hush of the sidewalk a balm against the noise she chose not to participate in. She didn't reach out to anyone, not even Lorraine, her lawyer cousin who had taken on formal representation once things crossed into court filings. Lorraine reached out for her. Just a heads up, she said one evening over the phone. His side wants to settle quietly, but I've told them your conditions. What were they? Clara asked, though she already knew. Full repayment, no negotiation, and an apology, not just a sentence, but a statement. On paper, there was a pause. And if not? Clara asked. Lorraine didn't hesitate. We proceed. That evening, Clara received a certified letter from Jacob's lawyer. It didn't contain a check. It didn't contain remorse. Just a request. We would appreciate the opportunity to resolve this matter in a private setting, without escalation. Clara read it twice, then placed it gently in a drawer labeled pending. The next day, she received an email with the subject line, Deposition Scheduling Request. Ellis v. Ellis. Lorraine's message was short. They refused the terms. Deposition is next Tuesday, 10 a.m. I'll handle prep. Just show up with truth. That's more than enough. Clara sat at her kitchen table and looked around. The quiet of her apartment, the neatness of her books, the calm steadiness of her life, these things were not loud, not dramatic, not messy, but they had weight. She got up, poured herself a cup of tea, and returned to her seat. On her screen, the timeline of evidence waited. Each file a breadcrumb, each entry a refusal to be erased. She wasn't destroying anything, she was archiving. Her lawyer schedules a formal deposition with Jacob. He said it was a mistake. I brought 11 printed pages. The conference room was cold, not cold enough to shiver, but just enough to make people second-guess their comfort, the kind of cold that made a person feel smaller than they meant to. Clara sat near the end of the long mahogany table, her documents laid out in a tidy stack in front of her, untouched coffee cooling in a paper cup by her elbow. Jacob walked in 7 minutes late. His collar was pressed, but his hair wasn't. His face looked tired, though not entirely regretful. His lawyer trailed behind him, younger than Clara expected, already thumbing through a leather-bound folder like he was flipping ahead in a script he thought he could direct. Across the table, Clara didn't flinch. She met Jacob's eyes just once. He didn't smile. Neither did she. The mediator, a calm man with close-cropped silver hair and a voice like smoothed gravel, called the meeting to order. His tone was neutral, rehearsed. Clara knew it well. She used to use the same one in parent-teacher conferences when tempers threatened to rise. Let's begin with a brief opening from both parties, he said. Mr. Ellis? Jacob cleared his throat. Look, I just want to say this wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't mean to do anything malicious. My mom, Clara, she's always been generous. We assumed she was on board. I was going to pay her back." Clara remained motionless. Jacob turned to the mediator, palms open. "It was a mistake. A misunderstanding." The mediator nodded slowly. "Thank you. Ms. Ellis?" Clara unfolded a manila folder, lifted the first sheet and handed it across the table. It was an invoice from the caterer, her name on the billing line, a signature, Jacob's, on the bottom. "I have 11 pages," she said, her voice even, "each one tied to a vendor, each one referencing my name or financial account, all without my consent." She handed the second page across. The boutique receipt. Third, a digital authorization email she'd never written. Fourth, the florist invoice she'd rerouted at the last moment. The stack kept growing, slow and methodical. Each document paper-clipped and highlighted, each one labeled with the same quiet signature at the bottom of the page. Clara didn't raise her voice. She didn't look for reaction. She simply built her case one paper at a time. Jacob shifted in his seat. His lawyer murmured something under his breath, then leaned forward. "My client maintains he acted in good faith." "I maintain," Clara said without looking up, "that good faith doesn't use someone's retirement without asking." The mediator tapped his pen once, twice. "Let's be clear," he said carefully. "The claim is for unauthorized use of financial resources, breach of fiduciary trust, and forgery. The documentation from what I've seen so far substantiates the claim." Jacob said nothing. Clara leaned back, her hands now folded calmly. The mediator continued. "My professional recommendation is full repayment of the withdrawn funds, including interest, plus damages incurred from the misuse of legal authority. I suggest this be settled today, or we proceed to trial." Silence filled the room, heavy, awkward, and then a knock on the glass door. Kendra stepped in. She had arrived late, unaware, or perhaps uninvited until now. Her eyes found Jacob, then Clara, then the pile of evidence sitting in the center of the table like a quiet betrayal. She hadn't seen it before. Not like this. Not in ink. Her gaze lingered on the withdrawal form, then the vendor statement. Her mouth parted slightly. "You used her account?" she said, almost to herself. Jacob didn't answer. The mediator looked down at his notes, waiting for the silence to settle. Clara simply closed her folder. The damage was done, but the clarity was just beginning. Jacob's in-laws looked shocked. It's their first time hearing the truth. "They said I ruined the marriage. I said I rescued my retirement." The day after mediation, Clara opened her laptop with the same calm she used to apply when reviewing student report cards, one column at a time, no rushing, no commentary. She wasn't looking for fallout. She was finalizing boundaries. Her cursor hovered over her savings dashboard. She checked the figures, double-checked the last withdrawal. She clicked into her retirement fund next, then scrolled slowly to the bottom, where the external access section still listed Jacob's name. For a long moment, she didn't move. The cursor blinked beside his designation, like it was asking her for permission to disappear. She clicked. Revoke access. Then, confirm. There was no animation, no confetti, just a quiet notification at the bottom of the screen. Permissions removed successfully. Clara closed the tab, then opened another. She clicked into the trust management interface her advisor had set up a week ago when she first mentioned wanting to secure everything in a place out of reach. The trust was simple, no successors listed, no co-managers, just her name and a folder labeled Post-Retirement Living, Private Use Only. She moved the funds over line by line, her pension remainder, the sale proceeds from her old car, even the bonds she'd tucked away 15 years earlier, gifts from her father before he passed, barely touched. Everything slipped into the account like puzzle pieces clicking into place. The screen loaded again. This time it flashed green. Primary trust activated. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes rattled as the wind picked up. Clara sat back. The apartment was quiet. She could hear the hum of her refrigerator, the slight creak of the floorboard near the window. both familiar, both comforting in their normalcy. Nothing extravagant surrounded her, no renovation plans, no luxury vacation boards pinned to her wall, but what she had now couldn't be bought. It was insulation, from chaos, from entitlement, from anyone who mistook her silence for surrender. She reached for her phone. Next, it had been buzzing intermittently all morning, missed calls, messages with no real substance, a cousin asking if she'd consider letting it go now, a distant family friend sending a passive remark, "Family is worth more than money, you know." She didn't reply. She opened her contacts, typed Jacob. Her finger hovered, then tapped Remove from Favorites. She opened Instagram. She didn't post. She didn't comment. But she did go to Kendra's page. The most recent photo was from the honeymoon, an oceanside view, filtered to look like something it wasn't. The caption, "Married to my best friend, sunlight cures everything." Clara pressed the 3 dots in the upper corner. Unfollow, then Jacob's profile, a post from the rehearsal dinner. Clara was cropped out of the frame, just a sliver of her shoulder visible behind a row of smiling guests. Unfollow. Her finger trembled slightly, not from regret, but from the clarity of finality. She closed the app, then opened her email. There, near the top of her inbox, was a message from her financial advisor. Subject, Trust Confirmation plus Protection Note. She clicked it. Clara, funds are secured. No external access remains. Recovery projections look strong. You've done the right thing. Methodical, quiet, and smart. The account is fully under your name. No inheritance listed. Let me know if you'd like to designate beneficiaries or keep it sealed. Clara read it twice. Her thumb hovered over the reply button, then stopped. Not yet. She didn't need to respond with words. She had already done the responding. Her financial advisor emails, "Account secured. Recovery set. They sent me photos from the honeymoon. I sent a revised will." Clara noticed the envelope before the kettle had finished boiling. It was resting quietly on her welcome mat, sun-bleached along one edge, the kind of card that announced itself before being opened. Pale blush pink, with gold foil pressed into the edges, and her name, Mrs. Clara Ellis, written in Kendra's rounded, symmetrical handwriting. She bent to pick it up, brushing the dust off the corner before walking it back into the kitchen, placing it on the table beside her steaming mug. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she stirred her tea gently, letting the peppermint steep fully, watching the pale clouds of heat unfurl and vanish into the quiet of her apartment. The sun reached through the sheer curtains behind her, casting thin bars of light across the wooden table where her estate folder sat open. The morning was still, measured. Clara liked that about mornings, the way everything was paused just long enough for her to be deliberate. She took a sip, then opened the card. The inside was blank. No message, no signature, no acknowledgement. Just a delicate, cream-colored interior and the manufactured scent of something perfumed, an effort to appear warm, with none of the substance to carry it through. Clara stared at the emptiness for a long moment. Her eyes didn't narrow. Her expression didn't harden. She didn't need to feel surprised. It had been the same during the wedding, during the mediation, during the months of silence that followed. This wasn't a shock. It was confirmation. She folded the card neatly and placed it atop a stack of documents labeled "Final Copy" in bold. Her updated estate plan had been notarized 2 days prior. Jacob's name had been removed entirely, not just as beneficiary but as executor, power of attorney, and emergency contact. There was no partial cut, no conditional clause. The ink was permanent. The removal, whole. The distribution of her assets now reflected a woman who had decided not to invest in sentimentality. Her retirement savings would be divided between a regional adult literacy program and a grant foundation for women over 60 starting second careers. Her belongings, jewelry, books, the home she'd made with careful dignity, would go to people who had shown up without obligation. The neighbor who salted her steps in winter without asking, the nurse who once stayed an extra hour past shift just to keep her company during recovery, and the friend who never asked her to explain the silence between her and her son. Her pension, once quietly depleted by forged signatures and polite theft, was now guarded with language no one could manipulate. She placed the thank you card into a drawer beneath her desk, labeled Archive. The other items in that drawer, the honeymoon photo from Instagram, the digitally signed vendor forms, the mediation schedule, were stacked in chronological order. Clara had kept everything, not out of spite, out of precision. She had been a teacher for 39 years. Accuracy was her default. Her phone buzzed quietly on the countertop. She didn't rush to check it, but when she did, she found another message from Jacob. Turks and Caicos was beautiful. Thought you'd want to see the photos. Hope you're doing well. We're starting fresh when we get back. Clara read it once, then tapped the screen to dim it. No reply, no response, no drama. She turned back to her will, her pen resting against the margin. For a second, she considered adding a note at the bottom of the page. Something soft, something final. But then she didn't. Instead, she closed the folder, slipped it into the safe, and turned the key. She walked to the window with her cup of tea and sat in the sun, allowing the warmth to reach her shoulders. Outside, the breeze was lifting leaves from the ground in slow, deliberate spirals. The neighborhood was quiet, but not empty. There were people who lived nearby who had names she knew, who had spoken to her at the mailbox or waved from their porch. People who had no reason to perform, and therefore no reason to pretend. She took another sip and set the cup down. No announcement, no retaliation, no headline, just a clean, final act. They used my pension. I used my pen.